From IBMTV, International Broadcast Media, this is your report from Washington. Can you believe it? 15 days and one more debate. Trump's team is telling him to stop interrupting Biden and try to be more likable. Watch for Trump to tell more jokes and to try to strike a softer tone. In the first debate, Trump interrupted Biden 71 times. Meanwhile, over 27 million people have already cast their ballots. Early voting opens this week in many states, including today in Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Idaho, North Dakota, and parts of Florida. Georgia, which has been plagued by long voting lines, continues to set new daily early voting records. This week in the House, it's on recess. Negotiations on a stimulus deal are ongoing, but House Speaker Nancy Pelosi gave the Trump administration until Tuesday if they want a bill settled by Election Day. The Senate will vote on a $500 billion targeted COVID-19 relief bill this week. It's not expected to pass. It's just seen as a political maneuver for Senate Republicans to argue that at least they're trying. Today, Trump will deliver remarks at rallies in Prescott and Tucson, Arizona. Tuesday, Trump will speak at a rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. Wednesday, Trump will speak at a rally in Gastonia, North Carolina. For the Money Report, the most shocking pre-election result neither side can dispute is in. Democrats are destroying Republicans in truly historic ways in fundraising. Money cannot buy elections, but it sure helps. Biden and a half dozen Senate Democrats are bathing in cash, often 2 or 3 time advantages over their opponents. So let's go to the tape. On the air, Trump is being outspent by Biden. In the top 14 Senate races, Democrats more than doubled Republicans' fundraising haul, $360 million to $143 million. In South Carolina, Democrat Harrison shattered fundraising records with $57 million. Graham, his opponent, only raised half that. In Montana, Bullock raised $27 million to his challenger's $12. In Iowa, challenger Greenfield raised $29 million, while the incumbent only raised $7 million. That was in Iowa. Democrats also raised eye-popping amounts for long-shot races in Kentucky, Texas, Mississippi, and once unthinkable races in Kansas and Alaska, forcing Republicans to play defense. Meanwhile, retailers are on the brink of what's possibly the most uncertain holiday season ever for our last shot at survival. Christmas is approaching against the industry's bleakest backdrop in years. The sector's on pace to top the worst year for retail bankruptcies on record back in 2010, when the industry saw a post-financial crisis shakeout. In world news, a resurgence in COVID cases this month foretells a lean winter of job losses and bankruptcies. The height of the pandemic last spring had caused the economy of the 19 European countries to plunge by a massive 11.8% in the April to June quarter. About 1.5 million more people registered as unemployed during the pandemic. The damage was contained only by the government's quick decision to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to keep another 45 million on payrolls and companies running. As the COVID cases rise now in Europe, economists are slashing their forecast. There's a high risk that the economies of France, Spain, and the Netherlands will continue to contract again in the last 3 months of this year. Italy and Portugal are also at risk. The head of the European Central Bank says the economic recovery from the COVID pandemic risks losing momentum due to a second wave of infections, that more stimulus could be added if necessary. Quote, the second wave of the pandemic in Europe, notably in France, and the resulting new restrictions are adding to the uncertainty and weighing on the recovery, Christine Lagarde said. Quote, since the rebound we saw over the summer, the recovery has been uneven, uncertain, and incomplete, and now risks losing momentum. End quote. She added, quote, the options in our toolbox have not been exhausted, but if more has to be done, we will do more. Now, the ECB is already supporting the economy with a pandemic emergency program of bond purchases that are pumping $1.5 trillion in newly created money into the economy. In addition to the bond purchase, the ECB has held its interest rate benchmarks at record lows. Its rate for short-term lending to banks is 0. For deposits left overnight with banks, the rate is negative 0.5. That means the banks pay a penalty for leaving money at the central bank instead of lending it to the businesses. In a sign of the time, it's cheaper than ever to rent an entire movie theater. AMC Theaters joins a handful of cinemas letting customers rent out auditoriums for private screenings. Rates start at $99 and increase to $349 depending on the movie. So herd your crew to the movies. Finally, the current COVID death toll from Johns Hopkins is over 219,674 American souls lost and 1,113,750 global souls lost with no vaccine in sight. That is your report for October 19, 2020 from IBMTV, International Broadcast Media, smart television for a smarter global community. From dictatorships to democracies around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm Bill Trezevant.